Thank you, Cathaoirleach. And first I want to welcome Minister Ryan to the House and to thank him for setting out the 10 sections of this bill and the rationale behind the bill. I recognise it's the government's it's come as a government response to rising costs of energy. Unfortunately, some would say it's not enough. Others would say it's not targeted specifically to certain targets. And indeed, I find myself saying, why am I getting it? I'm well paid. It's a good job. I don't need it. That's not to say I want to be flippant about it, but I want to be honest. And quite frankly, I don't know why any Oireachtas member should benefit from a 200 package, quite frankly. It's not targeted, it's not the right thing. And that is a criticism of the system, but I understand, Minister, it's not a criticism of you, but I understand you want to roll it out fast, and it's got to be simple. And it's got to be simple to administer. But I have a serious issue with elected members of either House of the Oireachtas benefiting €200 in terms of their income, quite frankly. And that's a concern I have about it myself. I don't have the option to pass it on. I have the option, effectively, to write a personal cheque of mine and pass it on to a charity. But I think, or someone who needs it, and I have to say that because I'm uncomfortable with the fact that I, as a representative of Oireachtas, is getting some sort of a subsidy when, quite frankly, I don't need it. And I suggest many other people don't need it, but that's not for me to say. People have different circumstances, but that's my concern. I also want to set out, and thank you for setting out the context and the provisions of the bill, and again, the package of measures, and I acknowledge that it clearly is an attempt to sort out the issue of rising costs. I suppose, can I just say at the very outset that the government say they are committed to protecting the most vulnerable. And I know where you're coming from, but too many of the middle squeezed people of Ireland are telling me they have difficulties paying their rent or paying their mortgage. It's a question of food or heat, rent or mortgage. These are tough times, and I know you accept that and you understand that too, Minister. The bill provides for the establishment of a scheme for the purpose of making electricity cost energy benefit for a payment of €200, I think, now in 2020. I also understand, and this has been raised with me by people who are tenants, that there are approximately 300,000 tenancies registered with the RTB. You'll be very familiar with the workings of the RTB, Minister, yourself, and that the majority of these tenants either hold their own electricity accounts or pay their landlord for their electricity on the basis of an annual bill or an actual bill. And then there's a question about who is going to receive this in this set of particular circumstances. Clearly, it's intended for the consumer and not the landlord. But however, this is an issue that needs to be administered, and I don't know if you've given thought to that, and you might just elaborate on that. As I say, I have a number of concerns in relation to the bill, and I want to flag them out here in the few minutes that I have. So we're talking about the need and the importance of insulating customers from further electricity prices. And that's going to be a long-term thing. This is a short-term thing. The fuel allowance is one of a range of incomes, and you've dealt with that, Minister, yourself in your presentation here tonight, that's supported by the Department of Social Protection, which also includes social welfare schemes. But not everyone is in receipt of that. There are people on low income that are not in receipt of some of these payments. Minister, I'd be very interested. The Minister for Housing, Planning and Local Government and Heritage indicated that there were plans to invest €85 million as part of the local authority's retrofit programme for 2022. And I welcome that. And that's real positive initiative. I know these things take a long time to come through, but you might, I'm not sure if you're that familiar with the detail of the scheme, but you might share that with us. They're really positive things that are happening, and I welcome that. In theory, this would retrofit approximately over 2,000 local authority homes and increase their energy ratings. That's a plus, and ideally we should have a rolling programme to roll out that. So you might advise on that. Minister, you understand, as I do, that alleviating energy poverty must be a key consideration in any successful national retrofit plan. And that's the problem. It has to be cost effective, and currently the loan structure is unaffordable for many people. That is the reality of it. You get a lot of electricity. As one woman said to me the other day when she applied or made inquiries about applying, she answered me, I said, would you not get this scheme? And she said, you get a lot of electricity for 27,000, and I suppose she had a point. And the cost is prohibitive for many people on very, very limited incomes. So look, I understand what you're doing. I'm supportive of what's being done. It's a short-term, but of course there's a bigger and more long-term strategic plan, and we've got to go along that route. We have people who are cold in their homes, as I said, Minister, who cannot afford simply to pay their bills, and many of them are working on low incomes, and we have to acknowledge that. So I think that's important. I spoke to a woman from Galway, County Galway, and she told me that she was now talking about taking out her landline. She can no longer afford her landline. Now, a landline is critical in rural Ireland, particularly if you have a power cut and you can't charge your mobile phone. And as a result, she will become more isolated as a result. But that's just one personal experience. I had a letter, as many of ourselves had here recently, from the Irish Senior Citizens Parliament, a voice for older people. And I think this somewhat crystallises what I'm trying to say here to you, Minister. It says retrofitting is worthwhile and beneficial, but the scheme excludes many older people who do not have the savings base to secure a loan to do the work. That's from a very active and important organisation representing Irish senior citizens. So, Minister, I'm not going to dwell on it to say, look, of course I'm going to support this legislation. I know where you're coming from, what you're attempting to do, but we really do have a crisis in relation to energy costs. And I would particularly like to hear about the government's plans for retrofitting, particularly our social housing stock. It's one area we know that people are there and are suffering disadvantage. We know many of them are on low incomes. That's many of them why they're in social housing. And I think it's a targeted area where we could focus on. But if we're going to support people, let's target our supports to the real vulnerable people in need. Thank you.